Welcome everybody to today's CV and Caffeine. So grab your favorite caffeinated beverage, whether that's something with some sugar in it, something comes in a can, or your coffee. And we are going to be talking today with three amazing leverage series instructors about the ever elusive, ever confusing defense panel when it comes to the career visioning process and hiring our candidates. So I'm going to let the gentlemen take it from here and introduce themselves, and we will get started. So Peter, why don't we go ahead and start with you, since you are in the top left-hand corner of my screen.
Sure. My name is Peter Chabris. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been with KW since 2007. Run a mega sales team here in Cincinnati, top sales team in the region. We should close about 500 units this year. Founder of Keller Williams Seven Hills Realty and KW Master Faculty and Certified Leverage Instructor.
Awesome. And Peter, I have a question for you because I just noticed it over your shoulder. Do you own a Jeep Wrangler?
Do I own a Jeep Wrangler? I used to when I was cool. But
I see the ducks over your shoulder, and I know that's a Wrangler thing.
Yeah, that's a Wrangler thing. So when I launched the Market Center with Bo and Tara Smith, we decided that Bo was Superman and I was Batman and she was Wonder Woman. And so she got me those ducks from some dollar store and they made it onto my shelf.
Perfect. I love it. All right, Bruce, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, g'day, Liz. 24 years with Keller Williams. Been a mega agent, OP, have multiple positions, international faculty. Currently investor in 5 market centers across the Northwest. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to have a conversation about this because I think it's so important.
All right, and last but not least, John.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Morris. I am the team leader of the Keller Williams Palos Verdes Market Center in California. In addition to that, I am the RTT for not one region, but 2 regions, so the LA Coastal and the West LA region, as well as KW faculty and I leverage series instructor. Been in the business about 21 years, been with KW for about 8.
All right. And you all know me. I am your host. My name is Liz Landry. I am your KW Talent Community Leader and MAPS Coach. So let's just go ahead and open the conversation, the defense panel. You know, we were talking before we actually started this and went live, and I said, do you guys find this thing that I keep hearing in conversations? And that thing is, I'll be talking with somebody, an agent, and they're going through and they're saying, well, I'm hiring this person, or I'm interviewing this person, or I had this hire that didn't work out, and they'll start going through the process, and I'll say, well, what'd your defense panel say? Like, who's your defense panel, and what did they have to say? People go, what's the defense panel, right? And what we find is that it kind of gets glossed over sometimes in our brains, or we've just absorbed so much information for the day that by the time we're going through that in career visioning, sometimes that gets skipped. And so we're here today to talk about not only the importance of it, but how to select your panel, what you might want in your panel, and what you're looking for to set them up for success. And Peter, let me just start with you. You had mentioned something earlier when we were chatting about it, of the importance of getting diversity in your panel. Can you tell us a little bit about that? When you look at the defense panel, why is that so important, and what are you looking for in the people for your panel?
Well, thanks, Liz, for asking the question. And I think it's important to acknowledge at this phase or this stage of the CV process, you're tired and you just want to get through it. And I think even when we're teaching this class, everybody in the class is tired, which is why they typically don't remember that defense panel part.
Yeah, it's 7 hours into class.
Right, 7 hours into this thing. I had a student the other day say, gosh, it took me less time to get married than to work through the entire CV process. So certainly you're tired at this point. You've really fallen in love with the candidate. You've checked all the boxes. This is the last thing. I think a lot of times we just want to move through this last piece, if we're actually going to follow the process, that we'll just kind of surround ourselves with an echo chamber of people that are like-minded, have the same perspective, and we'll rubber stamp it and say, yeah, that's a good one, Peter, go. The challenge of that is that you can't see outside of yourself if you're surrounding yourself with an echo chamber. And so the diversity that you pull into that defense panel is really important. You know, obviously we talk about the different hats that are in the manual when we're teaching the class, but I think diversity can show up a bunch of different ways in how you assemble that panel. And I think that's a really important part to make sure you're actually getting something from the step and not just cruising through it.
Well, we talk about the hats, right? Like, I'm a skeptic naturally. Yep. So when you guys look at the KPA and the optimism scale on the KPA, like, I'm all the way down there at the big fat 0 on there. I am a skeptic. Yeah, I have no optimism in me, apparently, with my behaviors or my mentality. And I like people like me, right? Like Peter's saying, I like people like me in my panel because they're going to speak my language. And that's a problem, right? Like they're going to sit there and they're just going to punch holes in it, punch holes in it, punch holes in it, but they may not counteract. And I'm also very likely to get people in a similar position to me. And that's one of the things that Peter's talking about is get different positions too, not just different personality styles, but different positions, different roles, right? Like John and Bruce and Peter all house different roles here, as do I. Like this would be a great defense panel for a candidate because there's so much different perspective there.
If I can add on to that, Liz, we also generally, if we're the person hiring with an organization, generally speaking, we're kind of at the top of the organization. And so there's going to be some natural bias for people potentially to defer to whatever your opinion is. And you're looking to solicit criticism, not criticism, skepticism. And if you don't have a culture where people feel comfortable speaking against your perspective, then again, that can become an echo chamber, even though you have different people from different parts of the organization. And so if you have a mentor, if you've got somebody like John as your coach, it's really important to pull them into that defense panel, even if it's a virtual participation, to make sure you've got somebody that's walked the walk before or as an accountability partner to be part of that panel.
You said something interesting on there of, people in our organization. And I like to pull people outside of the organization.
I love that. 100%. Right? Yes.
Like if I think that's a really good place to pull. Bruce,
yes.
When you're looking at a defense panel, how do you select your people for that panel? Where do you pull?
Well, yeah, if I could start, Liz, I think for me, the idea of a defense panel is really what helps us go from E to P in terms of using career visioning to further our goals and our organization. And if you think about it, right, the 5 steps to go from entrepreneurial to purposeful. Number 1 is focus. What is it you want? Number 2 is options, right, which presupposes people have lived before you. Number 3 is models, right, which is what the CV process is. It's a model. And then, of course, in order to achieve this, you have to implement the systems of the model, which the defense panel is one of those. But I think that the one that we miss out on, and the one that's probably the most important, is the accountability, right? That's step number 5. And that's what the defense panel is for me. It's accountability. So as you said, right, it's easy to fall in love with a candidate, particularly when you've spent as much time and you've invested as much energy in this process. And the defense panel holds you accountable to being true to the process. Right. And by the way, in my mind, the defense panel needs to be prepared to be able to do this with you. Right. They need to have the information. And oh, by the way, they need to come prepared with questions to sort of not. And I get the idea that we're poking holes in it, but it's also to confirm that you've actually made the right decision.
By the time we get to the defense panel, and you've both said it, is we want to hire this person. Right. Yes. If we've gotten this far in the process, we are on the home stretch. Like the light at the end of the tunnel is there. We're looking at this and we're like, I'm hiring this person unless something catastrophic happens and goes wrong. So we can tend to gloss through it. But I love the point where you said on Bruce that this is my accountability of staying true to the process, and that we want them to not only punch holes, but to counteract opinions and to challenge us on why am I hiring this person? Because truthfully, by the time we get there, we've decided we're hiring them unless somebody can show us a reason not to. We have fallen in love. We are committed. And man, do we not want to start over. Right? Like the time we've invested, you all laugh because you're all like, God, yes, I know that feeling. I know that feeling. You get so far. And then all of a sudden, what if it doesn't work on the defense? So we need those people who might have the hard truth and tell us, this isn't your candidate, right? Like someone's got to stand up to you.
Liz, the very first time I got to do a defensive hire, I actually got to do it with Mark Willis, and as an OP hiring a team leader. And it was pretty fascinating for me to actually have to go and justify my decisions. And we got towards the end of the defense, and he asked me a question which changed everything for me. He said to me, Bruce, would you be willing to allow this person to parent your children? And it was just like, because, and what it did for me as an operating principal, right, as the owner of the business, realizing that my team leader was actually the parent and I get to be the grandparent rather than me being involved. And it changed how I actually viewed the consequences of that hire, right? Would I be willing to allow this person to parent my children? And the answer is yes or no, right? So yeah, it's a powerful dynamic opportunity for you to get this process right.
That's an interesting question. I like that. I'm going to put that in my bag of tricks going forward. John, floor's yours.
Yeah, for me, I actually CV the people that are going to be on my defense panel because I want to know what their traits are, and I want to know if those things are going to align with mine. And particularly, I want the role I'm hiring for. I want somebody that's in that role that is going to be more of that, person that is a little bit more pessimistic, because I want them to poke as many holes as I can in that particular candidate. Not because I'm not going to want to hire him, but because they've done that role and because they're cautious about it and because they want to see the flaws potentially in that candidate. That I really look for somebody that is a little bit lower on that trait or on the other end of that trait, so that I can get some really good feedback from that particular person. But I think that's one of the big things, kind of like what Peter alluded to, is making sure that you have a diverse amount of people that all have different perspectives. Because I see it time and time again. It's, hey, I'm going to get a group together of people that are either on my team or that are like-minded. They're going to just say yes to everything that I say, and it's going to cause some things to be missed. And so I like to take it, like I said, a little step further. And one of the things that like I said, I do is to make sure that I, at least in the personal report, out to everybody that is going to be on my panel or that I'm considering for my panel. So that helps me fill the hats a little bit more strongly, because I could be thinking somebody's going to be a black hat, but they're going to say yes to everything. And that's not going to be a very effective thing as well, too.
I was asking Gary one time, I said, like, what's the hardest part about being Gary in this company, right? You're chairman of the board, you're the founder. Like, what's the hardest part about being Gary? And he sat for a minute and he looked up and he said, feedback. And I was like, feedback? And he said, yeah, people don't necessarily want to tell you hard truths when you get to a level. And it's interesting. I've read a lot of books where it's kind of the same thing, right? Like CEOs and the feedback loop, the higher you go in an organization, the less feedback you actually begin to get because people don't want to tell you what you don't want to hear. And to John's point on that, right? If we come in as the leaders and we have people from our team and our organization or people who view us necessarily as their leader, they may not be willing to give us the hard feedback, even if they are a skeptic, right? Even if they are a black hat, they might not be willing to give us the hard feedback of, it's not your candidate. You got to move on. And truthfully, sometimes it's hard to hear that as well. So especially if you know yourself, and I think this is important, when you know yourself and you like to be right, I like to be right. I know that. We don't always take that feedback great when we're not right. And we might become combative and argumentative and go into that and be like, no, this is my candidate. That's one of the important parts about this process, I think, to what John's saying of you've got to get the right people on the defense panel and we've got to select them and they've got to be able to tell us that is we also have to be willing to stand unbiasedly in the conversation and take that feedback if it's not the right person. Oh, John, you're on mute.
I put it on mute a little bit because I got my dog with me today, and so he might bark. So I try to keep it off.
That's okay. We love guest stars on CV and Caffeine.
So I was just going to say, yeah, I think that's one of the big keys too, is to go in there with an open mind and be very neutral and be willing to take the feedback. When I was going through the MAPS coaching program, one of the things that I heard from a great MAPS coach, Jeannie Osnes, was listen to the criticism. Doesn't mean you have to take it, but you have to at least be open to listening to it. And I think that's the big key in being that person who is defending your candidate is, hey, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get aggressive in this. I'm not going to go crazy on the people who are criticizing potentially my candidate. I'm going to listen to the criticism. I'm going to take the feedback. And then ultimately, at the end of the defense, whether everybody says that that person is the wrong candidate or they all say it's great, it's still your decision at the end of the day. And that's what you're there for, is to hear the things that they have to say about that person.
Jay Papazan and I were having a conversation one time about that in the CV process. And I think it was right when we came out with career visioning and redid RSTLM, came out with career visioning and changed that entire process. And he said, if I've got a candidate that the defense panel goes against, he goes, I've got to be willing to put my job on the line for that candidate. Like, if I'm wrong and I hire them and I go against I got to be willing to put my job on the line. Have you guys hired somebody that your defense panel said no before? When the defense panel said it's not your person, it's not your person. Have you guys ever adamantly hired someone and said, it is though, and I'm going with it? Have you ever done it?
No, ma'am.
No, not willing to put the job on the line, huh?
Liz, I think the key is you've got to keep in mind, what's the goal here? The goal is to make the right hire, right? And if you buy into this model, you have to trust it. I really think that like I said, we fall in love with the candidate, and we think, how many people have said, oh, I can change that person, right? And we all know how that works out, right? And so,
Bruce, it's not nice to point fingers like that.
Hi, my name's Bruce. I try to change people. No, I think the key is keeping in mind that what is the goal of this process, and allowing yourself to be open to it, as John said, right? Not moving into victim mode if indeed the panel says, no, this doesn't sound right, because again, that's another red flag. And if you're ignoring red flags, which people do, right? They're like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't really matter as much. I'm going to focus over here. They've got a perfect match on the KPA, right? So I think being true to the process, because that's what your goal is. Because, when we go through the class, right, we talk about what's the cost of a bad hire, right? And it's easy it's easy to put that in the back of your mind and say, oh no, this is not going to be like that for me.
I'm different.
I've spent days and weeks. Yeah, I just need to hire this person.
Yeah, we should put what's the cost of a bad hire in the afternoon, just to make sure people are still committing to the process and remind them why we're going through all of this.
Yeah, just so the real pain sticks in there when you're getting tired, jolt you back into awareness.
Liz, it's funny that you said pain. I was thinking while Bruce was speaking, I was thinking, the whole reason people skip as much as they do is because they're in so much pain and they just want to get out of the pain. And I think, how we kind of say lean in or embrace the suck or whatever. I really think it's the same mindset here. I have to come to terms with, I'm going to be in a place of pain for as long as it takes to get out of the place of pain the right way. And I just think, again, we should almost lead with that. Being in a place of pain is what's caused this event. And if you really want to get out of this and level up in your organization, you're going to have to sit in it for a little bit and make peace with that. And I think if you're able to cultivate and maintain that mindset, you don't feel the pressure to rush through this thing. And you have a much higher chance of hiring the right person for a long-term, successful, mutually beneficial relationship. So embracing the pain, I think, is a really important part about sticking this process.
I agree, right? One of the things I say all the time is the only way out is through, right?
Yes.
We can try to go left, we can try to go right, we can try to go backwards, but truthfully, the only way out is through. So the only way to get through the pain of having not having this person on board, the pain of going through the CV process, right? To not have that pain come back by having to now let somebody go and rehire them and have to go through all the things that comes from removing somebody out of your business who isn't succeeding and then repeating the process. The only way out is to actually go through the full process and to not cut the corners. And so, embracing that workload, frankly.
It's kind of like Stoicism 101, right? The obstacle is the way by Ryan Holiday. That's the thing, lean into the thing that sucks, because that's the way out, and that's really what we're talking about in this process.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna wrap here in a couple of minutes, but what's the last bits of wisdom that you guys would leave with? Anybody watching today who is like, oh my God, I'm in the CV process right now, and I wasn't gonna do that defense thing because I don't have a panel arranged, but my candidate's putting pressure on me and they need an answer. And what's the last the mic drop that you would give on that? Bruce, we'll start with you. You look like you have it on the tip of your like.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Where my head was going as you were just saying that, right, is it's like as realtors, right? Have any of us ever worked with a buyer or a seller we don't like? And I'll ask that question in a room. Everybody goes, yeah, yeah. And then the question is, why? Why do you work with people you don't like? And the ultimate reason is because I don't have enough people.
Yeah, because you don't have enough pipeline. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, and you know, the defensive hire to me is like it's the final critical step before I make the decision to hire. And yet, more often than not, when I've had the opportunity to be on a defense panel, what I discover is that they've only talked to two people. Mm-hmm. Right? This is the best of two people. And so it's like everything in business and in life, right? It's a lead generation issue first. You need to fill your pipeline. You need to have enough candidates so that when you get to this defensive hire, you've done what you need to do to make sure that you're presenting the best candidate you possibly can. Because this panel is here to help you make the right hire.
All right. Love it. John, how about you? Mic drop moment. Moral of the story. What would you leave people with?
Moral of the story. Well, first of all, I just want to agree with Bruce. That's one of the common things that I do see is that people a lot of times will have one or two candidates, which then causes desperation at the end because I have to hire this person because there's nobody else. And so I think that's really big. And kind of like we were talking before we started the call, I think one of the things that we are obligated to do, which is really important, is we need to really document the process the entire way through from all the other interviews and the references and all the feedback that we've gotten along that way. Because what I see happen too often is when people do have the defense panel, if they even have it, they don't prepare or don't adequately give the information to the people ahead of time for them to really give accurate feedback in that panel. Because now all that's happening is I'm coming in there, I'm telling you about this candidate, you're taking my word for it, but you don't have the validation, you don't see the paperwork, you don't see the interviews, you don't see the references and all the notes and the information that I've taken. And so I think that's problematic is, hey, a lot of people don't even skip the defense interview, and the ones that do don't adequately equip the people that are on their panel to be able to do what you ask them to do in the first place.
That's a great point on there is, right, if we do the defense panel and we're just telling the story, of course, we're going to craft the story that we want them to hear so they give us the answer that we want, right? Like, we're very good about that, right? We can set a stage to get the reply we want, but the packet, the information for them to be able to make their own opinion about what they're reading and what they're looking at, getting that done correctly. And you're right, John, providing enough time up front, I think is huge, right? Like this is not a 1 hour quick thing. These people are going to take days to review that package and that information. Peter, wrap us up.
Big pressure to close us out. I have no mic drop, but I do have just a tactical bit of wisdom, and that is make sure that somebody has walked in your shoes before, who's already tread this path, is on your defense, right? Somebody that's made this hire once, twice, three times, has succeeded at it. Hopefully they failed at it. That perspective is invaluable, and having that person on my defense panel in the past has saved me some bad hires. So make sure you've got somebody that's walked this path before you on your defense panel.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you, viewers. Thank you all as well. Here's mine, right? When we get to this point and you're looking at this and going, okay, defense panel, got it. KPA validation. Like I'm doing all the things. I'm going through process. Take career visioning twice a year. It should be a non-negotiable from the day you decide that you are going to be hiring for your business and you are no longer a single agent. That class can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, years of pain, right? Just having that and mastering that process, it is something that absolutely you should be taking twice a year. Take the day out of your schedule. It is time well invested, and sharpen your skills on it, right? The material will change over time, but most importantly, the way you hear the material will change based on the way you have circumstances, what you've experienced, right? These gentlemen on the screen here, I would bet between the four of us, we've KPA'd thousands of people and put thousands of people through this process. Lean on the experience of that. These are the folks that craft this, that teach this, that do this. Lean into that experience and become one of the masters of the process. There's a lot of parts in the process, no doubt, but you can become a master of the process with time on task over time. So we will see you next month on our next CV and Caffeine. If you all need anything or you're looking for a career visioning class near you, you can comment on this post and we will see what we can find for you near you, or talk to your team leader or OP. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.